Welcome everyone, I'm Bianca Miller-Cole.
And I'm Byron Cole.
Welcome to the Self-Made podcast interview series. We're here today with Ruth from Champs Consulting, and we're going to talk all about well-being, anxiety, and all the other things that can really affect people quite seriously when you're trying to be an entrepreneur or you're making your career and so on. So Ruth, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for having me.
So before we get started, I'd love to know more about your kind of entrepreneurial journey. So how did you get started in this particular industry? What led you to starting your own business?
Okay, so it was really personal lived experience. I was on a board of a company, a diversity and inclusion consultancy, and for me, well-being was always the wrapper that kind of sat around inclusion, because it doesn't matter who you are, what background you're from, intersectionality, well-being, we all have mental health, as we know, and that changes throughout life, and it changes depending on our own personal circumstances. So I'd always had a big belief around kind of well-being being very intrinsic to inclusion, and also I'd always been interested, I'd been passionate about wellness as a subject. So I'd run lots before, I'd been a fitness instructor briefly when I took a sabbatical from banking. So the fitness health side of things was always really personally important. And then in 2015 I went through a personal situation. I had a relationship breakup and used some unhelpful coping mechanisms to kind of deal with that. So threw myself into work and unhelpful kind of with food, disordered eating and exercise, really. I was just using those as a way to kind of control everything else and to block out what was going off. And that just resulted in me having this huge, I like to call it a breakthrough now, because that's obviously less there instead of a breakdown. The positive psychology element. But basically, I had what I call a meltdown, which is a panic attack at work, and was then off work for quite a number of months. And I was diagnosed with 2 anxiety disorders, generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder, which actually made a lot of sense then on the last 20 years of my career, actually working in the corporate world, avoiding the strategies I'd had, lack of self-esteem quite often, even though I was portrayed very confidently, and panic attacks, I'd always had them. I didn't realize what they were. I thought it was something else. So anxiety disorders can be triggered by huge stress situations, and they come from a complex mix of risk factors, and I think I had lots of these different risk factors that then created that whole process. So and then for me, it was just really interesting, because this wasn't, as you know, like 4 years ago, it wasn't that long ago, and we've changed so much around the conversation around mental health. I mean, it is shifted, but everyone didn't know how to talk to me about it. Nobody kind of asked me how I was. You know, if you've been off work with a physical illness and you come back, and people, you know, I think they're probably, people are afraid to kind of say the wrong thing or upset you or know what they can, because some people see mental health as being very personal, which it is, but also the fact that you can't ask about that, whereas no one would think twice about saying, you know, how are you after having pneumonia, or, you know, your broken leg or whatever.
Yeah.
So I decided to leave and set up on my own, and that was just really as an associate. And then the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to position myself in this space, and just had this dream that was what I wanted to do, and create sort of space for people to be open at work. And it just came from a personal passion. It didn't come from, I see this as an opportunity or it's the next big thing. It was just like, I didn't want anyone to go through what I'd gone through. And having seen then how I'd been in my corporate career, I thought, I don't want anyone to be going through that either, because I'd, you know, all the avoidance strategies I'd used. And the more I spoke to people or told people what had happened, more people were saying to me, that's happened to me, or, you know, this person I know, my friend. And it just became more and more something that I thought, right, I need to really do something about this. And I've always been hugely practical. Background is project management and business improvement. So I'd never worked in learning and development or HR. And I just wanted to create practical solutions for organizations that can help their employees. So that was because I think there's so much out there and people just wanted to know, okay, well, what do we do? How do we start this conversation? And yeah, so that was kind of what fueled me. And now it's a team and a business and we're global and it's
awesome.
It's just, yeah, growing from that. And it's really that the irony is, you know, quite often people will say, who I don't know, or they have a conversation with me and they say, oh, you picked a right time to get into mental health, because obviously it's been a few years and you know what it's like, you're slogging away, you know, they don't see the 4 a.m. I mean, I'm very honest and genuine on social media, but people don't realize, you know, your 4 a.m. starts, your late nights, you do, when it was just me, you know, traveling around everywhere, trying to do everything. And I always just wind them up a little bit, because I always go, oh, yeah, it was great, I had a breakdown in 2015, I'm so glad this happened to me.
Yeah.
But it's just, it never came from, I could make it, you know, the fact I make a living out of this, wonderful. But for me, it's always been about helping people and, you know, making that difference. And that's, for me, is what is the passion, really.
And who do you work with mostly? Is it corporates or corporate?
Yeah, it is. It's, I think, because I'd had a background in the corporate sector, so I'd worked in investment banking, I'd worked in wealth management and aerospace and recruitment, so both here in the UK and overseas, that I was very much aware of what the corporate world is like. And I think that's why organisations like us and the team that I now surround myself with have all come from that space. So we're not going in saying, oh, this is the rose-tinted view of how it should be. I mean, we work a lot, for example, with law firms. I mean, partners of a law firm aren't going to be working 9 to 5, you know. So how do you equip yourself as an individual to manage your stress, your team stress if you're a manager, clients, those external stressors? How do you practice self-care? You have to be mindful then that if the business wants you late at night, then okay, that's part of my job, but then how do I pull that time back for me? And that's been really interesting, I think, from my perspective, of, because I'm still in recovery, and I think that's an ongoing journey. I don't think it'll be ever, oh, I don't have this anymore, because, or maybe that might be in the case in the future, but at the moment it's not. And I think, you know, I remember sitting down with my GP saying, I know I've got I'm building a business, so it's not like I'm just doing a role where I go into work, do what I need to do and go home and forget about it. But that wouldn't be me. And I think that's really important to recognise. Just because you have been diagnosed with a mental health condition doesn't mean you're supposed to sit into this box of, or be wrapped in cotton wool, or you're not supposed to do these things. I think that if anything, it inspires other people to believe that they can do whatever they want to accomplish. So, yeah.
Can you break down for us, what is an anxiety disorder?
So if you imagine a time when you've been really anxious, like just normally, so going to the dentist, job interview, driving test, all those things, where doing a podcast, really joking. Any of those times where you get that feeling about anxiety, and it's usually for a period of time. So if you're going to, you know, lots of people say, oh, the dentist, or going on an aeroplane. So you have that, you might have a little bit of anxiety leading up to it, and that manifests itself physically sometimes. So you might have nervous tummy, or you get sweaty palms, or have, you know, shaky arms and legs, whatever that might be. You might have those cognitive distortion, so you think, oh, the plane's going to crash. You might have behaviors that you do, that you have to pack things in a certain way when you get on the flight, so or you might need to do certain things at the airport that make you feel comfortable, and you might get quite emotional, so you might be very irritable before you get on the flight, for example, or you might be quite upset about it. So there's all these different factors that come into play. But after you've got on the flight and you've got to where you're going, you know, that's it. It should, you know, you relatively return back to normal. But an anxiety disorder is more severe, and it lasts for a longer period of time. So generalized anxiety disorder, which is GAD, which is what I was diagnosed with, is like it's like being anxious, but for at least 6 months as a minimum, and then ongoing. So it's just that really heightened sense of, you wake up and everything is, it's like a sensory overload of stimulation. So you can't, and there's nothing really that is really kind of creating that. And it comes in two ways. One, it either comes through cortex in the brain, so that's your overthinking, your thoughts, or it comes from the amygdala part of the brain, which is where you're fearful of the environment, and that can create panic attacks as well. If you've had a panic attack, so I used to have panic attacks in meetings, which I never knew that's what they were. But once I had one in a meeting, then every time I'd go into a corporate setting in a meeting, my brain would think, oh, you had a panic attack here last time. Okay, let's prepare fight flight mode and kick in again, because it's trying to keep your brain's trying to keep yourself safe, like in prehistoric times. So an anxiety disorder is just that irrational fear, I guess, as well, subject to the situation. So going into a meeting, unless you're going to be, disciplined, but just going into a normal team meeting shouldn't be all the time, hugely fearful. So it's kind of disproportionate to the situation you're facing.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So I know mental health is kind of this, previously it wasn't really spoken about.
No.
I feel. So why do you think now that there's been a bit of a slight change in the kind of conversations that we're having and the mentality of organizations and individuals, why is it becoming more of an acceptable topic to speak about, do you think?
I think because we've changed so much as a society globally, and I think so there's so many different challenges now in society, whether that be austerity, poverty, social media, the political climate, global climate change. I mean, there's so much that's going off that's so different to 10 years, 11 years ago. We think 11 years ago we didn't even have iPhones or tech or apps, and everything's shifted in quite a short space, I think. And so we're feeling that pressure more. And I think work impacts people so much. And, I've never gone into an organization since 2008 where people have gone, we've got loads of budget, we've got loads of people, everything's really great. Everyone's trying to do more with less.
Yeah.
We're switched on 24/7. We operate in multiple time zones. So that pressure's there and that competitiveness is there. And I think there's been a huge growth with like the gig economy and entrepreneurial, disruptors as well. So that's created pressure. So there's all these factors I think that come into play. And then within that, the pressures that people face day to day. So, financial well-being. I was talking to a manager the other day who was saying, one of his team almost was made homeless because of the fact that, in terms of salary and what they're trying to do and outgoings and, that's people everything's happening like that to people more common than it was before. So I think that those pressures and family pressures, and then, there's over 70 million working days are lost in the UK alone due to mental ill health. And they're the ones we know about.
Yeah.
Sure. And those are people that are taking the time off, because presumably there's people who just don't. They just keep going and then they don't realise.
Yeah, so presenteeism, so being at work when you're not well and you are struggling, so you're not getting the support. So it's not like you're at work and you might be on reduced hours or reduced duties and you're getting that right support from your business. But if you're at work and you're struggling and you're not well, that's actually 1.8 times more than absence. Because if you think about the effect it has on you, but also the business, your team, the work you're doing, the quality of the work, performance, risk-taking, decision-making is all really poor. So I think it was categorised in 2017, it was around £21 billion lost on the UK economy just for people being at work and they're not well. And I think, so there's a huge pressure, and these are stats we either with all stats, you always take it either side, but I mean, that's still a huge amount. And I think
Absolutely.
we're talking more about it, but I still think we're touching the tip of the iceberg to really understand. That's why we do what we do, and why we go into organisations, and some still are very kind of not talking about it, or they don't know how to approach it, or change their behaviour.
Do you find that there is what kind of, is there a demographic that's more, or just in terms of gender actually? Is it more men or women that actually come forward and say that they're having issues with, whether it be anxiety or whatever it is? Because I'll say the reason why I ask this question is I feel that as men, we don't open up as easily as potentially women do. And I'm just curious to know whether this is a fact or not.
Yeah, it is. So sadly in the UK, 84 men take their own life every week. So that's, you know, huge stat, and that was out last year, and that, again, they're the numbers we know about. So that has a huge impact. I think with any kind of anxiety or depression related illness, women tend to come forwards, and globally the World Health Organization has recognized, doesn't matter what culture, where you sit in the world, what community, women always, we tend to use our support networks, our friends and our family, or we seek professional help, whatever that might look like. And I think those kind of situations before in the past, you know, it's been more about women going forwards, whereas men, doesn't mean men haven't suffered with anxiety, depression. It's often men have self-medicated more to deal with cope, so drugs and alcohol, and that is strongly risk related to suicidal risk as well. So, you know, that's often why we might see those high numbers there as well. So yeah, I think it's changing. I think there's more people in the public eye who are male, who are perhaps not quite, I guess if you want to think of like people like Professor Green or Freddie Flintoff, like kind of lads who've kind of spoke very openly about their mental ill health and anxiety. So they did a piece for Heads Together, a video. You've got sports personalities who are talking more about mental ill health as well, which I think is really important, so people can see that. But I think it has to come down to when you're in the workplace, so you've got those male leaders as well talking about their own individual stories, because I think storytelling is so powerful, and it's what we kind of latch onto as humans. It's kind of how we reframe a narrative, and it's how we learn. So if somebody else thinks, well, they went through that, or it might not be the same, but I feel that I could identify with that. It's you know, people like me, that's what people want to say. Yeah.
It's kind of perceived as a weakness previously, wasn't it? So I guess people didn't talk about it because they didn't want to be, especially I guess men, who didn't want to be perceived to be weak, and that's why they were having these issues. And now it's more acceptable or accepted, or people realize it's a reality. Is that kind of the...
I think it comes back to stigma. You know, if you think about the workplace, if I talk about this, is it going to affect my promotion? Is it going to affect people thinking I'm not suitable for the next, you know, my next level of my career? Often in the past, when we think about the male being the breadwinner of the family, so is it going to impact on, you know, the finances? Am I supposed to be seen as being weak? I'm supposed to keep everything together for everybody. So I think there is all those, you know, those pressures on males to you know, to have that face of everything's great and I'm managing it and I'm coping and, you know, I'm really tough. And I think that's, you know, it's the same as we've all got those different shades to us where we need that support, and that's okay to you know, to seek that out.
And a lot of this comes down to work-life balance, fundamentally, doesn't it? So I know this is kind of one of those words that people throw about all the time. We got a message this morning saying, can we talk about work-life balance today? And I feel like that's part of the problem, isn't it? This idea of work-life balance.
I mean, I don't like that phrase, because I think, I know work is not life. Maybe as an entrepreneur, sometimes it is.
It kind of is, yeah.
Well, that's another conversation for another day.
I mean, I have to practice what I preach, but I think I know. I mean, you guys will know this. I could work every single day without a doubt. I mean, there's no, and I think most people feel like that these days. You could work every day. Even if you're in a corporate job, you can always answer emails. You could always be doing something. So what I try and educate employees on, and even managers to work with their teams on this, is you've got to create your own boundaries. And this is where it's so nuanced, because if I don't have children, so for me, I quite enjoy working on a Sunday and perhaps sometimes catching up for the week ahead, because I tend to have other commitments where I might generally not work on Fridays, and Mondays I don't tend to have meetings. So Sundays sometimes I quite like to have as a catch-up day. But I don't email my team. I save everything in drafts. I don't email clients. You know, if I'm doing any work, no, it's mine to kind of be doing. And it's setting that precedent, and it's knowing, like this weekend, because we've got Mental Health Awareness Week next week, which is really full on for us, and the following few weeks right up until kind of beginning of June, is that I'm having this weekend off. I'm deleting my social apps. So for me, I have to delete them, so I'm not tempted to
I'm the same.
So I'm going to delete it. I'm going to, from tonight, I'm going to catch up with some friends, and that's it. I'm going to have this weekend just to recharge. And I think that's what I'm going to, and I think you've got to find what works for you. And that's the important part of, if I prefer not to kind of have anything. Mornings are really important for me because I feel like it's my best time. I like to do my own little self-care rituals. I like to journal and do all that sort of stuff. So for me, that's really important to have that time protected. So if my assistant puts in a meeting at 8:30, it's not going to make me feel great. So it's kind of, and I know everyone doesn't have that flexibility. So if you are in a corporate role, how do you then manage that in the evenings? Or do you say, right, it's 5:00, I'm going to go to this exercise class, or I'm going to go and get home and see the kids before they go to bed? Or if you're on vacation, there's a whole reason why it's called vacation, is to vacate. So people who answer out of office, you get an out of office and then
respond.
I
had that yesterday. I had that yesterday actually. Someone I emailed out of office came, then straight away they
responded within a minute.
Yeah. In fact, they sent me an email when they were out of office.
Oh, okay.
Bizarre. Okay. Anyway, so a question actually. I feel that people always are quite reactive to when they have an issue. So how can we be proactive?
Okay, so one thing that Shams is about is positive psychology, which is about looking at how, as psychologists call the normal population, but that's most of us, how do we enable ourselves to flourish? Okay, so how do we think about achieving optimum functioning? And there's a whole variety of factors that come into that, but it's all about preventative, because I always think of it as if you're taking off in a plane to jump out to do a skydive, your parachute is hopefully packed up and ready to go. You're not sewing it and sort of folding it up and putting it all in on the way up. So all the practices like mindfulness, exercising or being active, eating right, getting the right amount of sleep, spending time with friends and family, doing the things that you're passionate about, all these skills that mental fitness, we don't develop, so like our physical fitness, like mental fitness, if we don't work that out and create that, when we try and do it when we're unwell, we wonder why it doesn't work. So, I'm so stressed, I'm going to try some mindfulness. Well, it won't work.
Yeah.
Or people then start to fill up their diary with trying to get to the gym or whatever it is. So I think it's about finding what works for you and then creating that routine. It's about routine and making sure that you put that time in and making sure you do the things that are important for you. And because the more self-aware you are, the more you know when you're not well. So there's like today and yesterday, I was almost there, but today I feel like 100 million times better than what I did earlier on in the week. Because physically I was knackered, so it affected me mentally. I'd got post-race blues, all these different things. So I just knew I had to sit with that. There was nothing I could do with it. I just needed to let it pass and just carry on looking after myself, nourishing myself, trying to get some early nights, having lots of hot baths, doing what I needed to do to make myself feel today, I'm ready for it. So we all have dips, as that's normal. But when that does happen, how do you then go, right, you need to be in bed at 9:30 every night this week and knock on the head with
your body? Yeah.
So this weekend I could quite easily say, I'm going to fill it catching up with people, but actually no, I'm just going to leave it blank, do what I need to do, and just be mindful of that. So yeah.
So you referred to taking yourself off of social media for the weekend, logging out of apps and so on. Are there any other kind of top tips that you would give to our audience with regards to trying to make sure you're looking after you? What would you usually say to your clients, or, what's your top tips for that?
Top tips in specifically social media or top tips?
Just for mental wellness, just to keep yourself.
Okay, so my top tips would be so manage your social media, and I know that's hard from being building a business on social as well. But if that is deleting apps, if that is putting the screen time alerts on that you have. If you've got iPhone, I think the Androids have them now as well. So whatever that means for you, so to make sure you are managing your time, unfollowing people that you don't like, make you feel.
That's a big one, actually.
Really?
I think people actively follow people and don't realize the person they're following is making them feel bad.
Yeah.
On social, especially I think amongst women, you follow women who look spectacular and you think, oh yeah, I wish I looked like that. That doesn't help your mental wellness.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I see it.
I had a message no, it's true. I had a message the other day from somebody, and it was a bloke actually, but he actually wrote to me and he just said, I just want to say I love your Instagram because it's just genuine and authentic, and I think that means that sometimes I just, I'm there and I'm like, ugh. And, today I posted a picture of my pajamas with like crazy hair. And I'm like, well, there's no filter on it, but that's real life. And people know you look all, you've got your makeup on and you're feeling yourself. But I wasn't. I was just like, this is me in my pajamas.
Yeah.
But so I think be mindful of social media. I think it's about developing rituals or routines that are important for you. So it's not about goals. It's about what are those things that make you feel good? Is it that really nice coffee in the morning? Is it having a bit of time for some mindfulness? Is it gratitude, like journaling? So having some time for you. Sleep, 110%. Like we don't get enough sleep that what we should. Spending time with your friends and family, whoever that is, your tribe, people that surround yourself with people that you can be great with, but also people you can go, I'm feeling crap and I don't need you to do anything, but I'm just telling you I'm feeling crap, and they're there for you. It doesn't matter. And I think finally, do you know what? I love a strong outfit, and I think for me, it's called enclothed cognition, but mentally, when you put something on that you feel good in, and that could be anything. And I think recently, I am a brand ambassador for a female label who creates women's clothing for confidence, women of all shapes, sizes, ages, backgrounds. And I wore one of the dresses yesterday, and I feel like badass when I wear that. And I think find your thing that makes you feel really good about yourself.
I love it.
Do you know what, that's a good tip, because if you sometimes you put on your comfy clothes,
when
that's not going to make you. If you put something on, you feel sharp.
You feel $1 million.
Like today, I was like, these are new earrings. I bought them last week, and I'm like, I'm rocking these today. Bit of red lipstick.
Very nice.
We love it. So I have another question. So how can others, friends and family recognize people who are having or going through kind of, mental health issues? How can we be kind of proactive to make sure that we're supporting them? And because sometimes you don't always maybe realize that you're having issues as an individual. So are there any kind of telltale signs or red flags that others can kind of see and kind of intervene at that stage?
I think there's two things. One, so because mental health is so individual, there's lots of different signs and symptoms that you might spot, but it's about the change in behaviour with that person. So whatever that is, just pick up on it. And I think it's just taking the time to ask that person if they're okay. And sometimes you might have to ask several times before they even realise it themselves. And sometimes they might be really defensive, and you just have to bear with them and, just let them know that you're there for them. I think, and actually, since I've been through my own mental ill health, is that friends are much more switched on now to know when to reach out to me. So this week, just due to a couple of Instagram posts I did just about, as I said, those kind of post-race blues and being physically not great, and obviously it did affect my mental health. And one friend was just adamant she was going to speak to me. She was trying to catch up with me. She was calling me, and in the end I spoke to her. She said, I just wanted to know that you were all right, and I just wanted to have a conversation with you. And so that meant more than anything, actually, because I know 4 years ago that wouldn't have been the case. They wouldn't have done that. And I think the second thing is always also checking on that strong friend, because I think in the past that was me, and I would be very good, and I think I did put a very good sort of face on it, a mask for quite a period of time. And again, it goes back to what you post out on social media and people think everything's okay and great. I think those people are sometimes the ones you really have to look out for, because those who are telling you that they're not okay, whereas those who seem everything is great, but there might be something you're thinking, I don't know if that kind of sits right with me, or actually everything looks so great, but I just want to check in on them anyway, and just that text or call, but a text of, is everything, just checking in, is everything all right? I haven't heard from you in a while. And I had that from a friend this week who says, I'm trying to keep up with what you're up to. I know you've been really busy, and just wanted to just send you a quick message. And I thought that, again, that's really nice. So always, people who seem to be so busy and their lives are rich doesn't always mean that they're okay as well. So, yeah.
And is there any particular organizations that people can reach out to if they realize someone is struggling with their mental health and maybe they aren't aware of it, they don't realize, are there organizations out there that friends can reach out to, and are there organizations that individuals can reach out to?
So there's a lot more support that is available now. You can reach, if anyone is in crisis, you can always reach out to the Samaritans. CALM, which is Campaign Against Living Miserably, which is the male mental charity, is a great one for kind of males to reach out to. You've got charities like No Panic, which is where I'm a patron of, as an anxiety charity. So they've got lots of help and resources as well. So there's a lot more that's accessible. Papyrus is a charity they've got a hope line for young people under the age of 35 that people can reach out to. So there is a lot more that's accessible. And I think now what's great is it's not just about calling somebody up, that they've got text and email and online support. So if you feel uncomfortable, you can just message somebody, or if you've got a concern about a friend and want to know how to support them, you can, find out more information. So
Awesome.
Excellent.
So how can people connect with you? Where can they find you?
So they can find me on Instagram at ruth.cooper-dickson, and we were also on Shamps Consult. And Twitter is the same, and LinkedIn. So you can find us on there as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today. We really appreciate
I really enjoyed
your
it.
insights and advice. And that's it. So thank you very much, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I've been Bianca Miller-Cole.
And I'm Byron.
Self-made.
A success.
Bye.